From the supposedly empty house, I heard some voices. I clearly sensed the presence of a human along with a creepy creaking noise from the floor. It seemed like someone was on the second floor. Filled with apprehension that it might be an intruder, I tiptoed up the stairs, trying not to make a noise. Oddly, there were clothes scattered in the hallway as if making a path, leading to the bedroom my husband and I share.
Nathan.
Ava.
At that moment, I heard familiar voices coming from inside the room. It was a cheerful, whispering voice as if sharing a secret.
Is this okay? Turning down my mother-in-law's invitation to do this?
I'd rather be here with you than entertaining some old lady.
Stop it! Enough!
Peeking inside the room through the slightly open door, I was at a loss for words, because my husband and my daughter-in-law were lying in bed together, holding each other naked. A sweet atmosphere, like that of lovers, was hovering around.
I'm happy to have a daughter-in-law like you.
You should pay attention to mother-in-law too, it's pitiful.
She can be treated as a housemaid. After all, she can only do the household chores.
The two of them laughing and insulting me probably never suspected they were being watched by the person in question. I couldn't hold back the anger welling up from the bottom of my stomach. I will make them regret doing such a filthy act in broad daylight in the bedroom of a married couple. My name is Angela. I have always worked as a nursing assistant at a hospital. Although it's always hectic, I take pride in my job, and I enjoy interacting with patients. I met my husband when he was admitted to the hospital, and after dating, we got married in our 20s. I had heard that nurses and caregivers often date patients, but I never thought such a thing would happen to me, just like in the comics. It didn't take long before I married my reliable and kind husband. We had a son, and we've lived happily as a family of 3 without any significant troubles. Our son, who excelled academically and was very kind to others, grew up in an unknown manner. I may be doting, but my son is and always has been my pride and joy. Upon graduating from college, he joined a well-known corporation. His performance was excellent, and his work ethic was commended. Smith, I'm proud that you're working hard, but are you taking some time to relax?
Don't push yourself too hard when you're not feeling well. You guys worry too much. I'm fine. Oh, by the way, I have some happy news to share with you both soon. Look forward to it.
To me and my husband, who were worried, our son said so with a bright smile. Wondering what the happy news could be, one day our son came home with his girlfriend.
This is Ava. We've been dating for a couple of years. I am thinking about marrying her.
When our son told us that, we were surprised and overjoyed. Although it was a bit sad to think that our son was finally starting a family, we knew as parents that we couldn't always be by his side. If our son chose her, she must be a good match for him. She was polite and friendly to me and my husband, so we had a good impression of her. And then, half a year later, our son got married. I met my son's wife and relatives for the first time at the wedding. They were all very nice people, and the mother of my son's wife even exchanged contact information with us on our first meeting. She told us to consult her if we ever needed anything and to support each other, and I remembered feeling very reassured. We still keep in touch with the family of my son's wife occasionally and dine at each other's houses. With our son married and us getting along well with our daughter-in-law's parents, our family seemed to be smooth sailing at a glance. But there was something that bothered me. It was the frequent visits from my son's wife. We all agreed not to live together, but for some reason my daughter-in-law showed up at our house. Perhaps because she is a homemaker and has too much free time, or maybe she's just trying to be considerate because we're her in-laws. Ava, you don't have to worry so much. Even if you don't visit us often, it doesn't change the fact that you're part of our family. When I said this, my daughter-in-law tilted her head.
I'm not being considerate. I just want to visit, so it's okay.
I returned a stiff smile to my daughter-in-law, who said this with a bright smile. Honestly, our relationship with our daughter-in-law is still new, and sometimes we still see her as a guest. I think it's inevitable to feel tired when a stranger stays for a long time. However, there was another reason why I couldn't easily accept my son's wife. For some reason, she would often find excuses to take my husband out. At first, it was for shopping, then more shopping, and then movies. For me, my days off with my husband were my greatest respite, so having them taken away by my daughter-in-law didn't sit well with me.
Sorry, mother-in-law. I'm borrowing your husband, okay?
When she left, my daughter-in-law smiled in a way that I didn't like, as if she was triumphant. What was she trying to compete with me for? And my husband, who would listen to what my daughter-in-law said rather than spend time with me, was also to blame. Honey, could you not go out with Ava so much? You two are father-in-law and daughter-in-law, right? Isn't the distance a bit too close? Normally, the relationship between a father-in-law and a daughter-in-law is awkward, but could it really be that they're friendly enough to go out, just two of them? Being too friendly and being perceived as weird by others wouldn't be good for them either. When I told my husband this, partially as a warning, he laughed it off lightly.
I'm just building a good relationship with my son's wife. Don't worry.
I understand that, but isn't it too often? My daughter-in-law comes to our house every 2 or 3 days, and if my husband is off, they go out in the morning, and if he's working, they go out after work. Even I, his wife, don't go out so frantically.
Ava is trying to get along with us. It wouldn't be fair if I didn't respond to that, would it?
Despite my genuine concern, my husband only gave vague responses, and it was like pushing on a curtain. My husband looks young for his age and has a good physique, so I can't help but worry that maybe my daughter-in-law is looking at him with those eyes. Well, if that's not the case, she'll probably get tired of playing with my husband eventually. I was optimistic about it, but contrary to my expectations, their relationship became even more intimate. When I returned from work, my husband, who was supposed to be off that day, was not at home. I tried calling and texting him, but no matter how much time passed, there was no reply. I didn't know whether he would eat dinner or not, so I just prepared his portion just in case. Several hours later, just when the day was about to end, my husband finally came home. And for some reason, our son's wife was next to him. Where were you? Was Ava with you? I was worried because I couldn't reach you.
We just went on a little trip.
With whom?
With Ava. We went far away.
Surprisingly, my husband and our son's wife had gone on a day trip from morning until late at night. When I heard that they had gone out of the county together, my mind was in a mess. The fact that he had gone on a trip with our son's wife without notifying me in advance, and that he had ignored my messages and enjoyed himself, made me incredibly angry. What are you thinking? You're definitely acting strange. Going on a day trip with your son's wife is extremely inappropriate.
Don't get so mad. There's nothing to hide. That's why we came back like this, right?
How am I supposed to know that? How can you ignore my messages and still be so nonchalant about it? My previous doubts and anxieties exploded as I couldn't stop shouting at my husband. Now that I think about it, I was also jealous of our son's wife. For the past few years, my husband and I haven't gone out together, nor have I been asked to go far away. Despite this, he casually goes on a day trip with his son's wife, which made me increasingly irritated.
Please, don't be so angry, Angela. Nathan was just trying to get along with me.
Ava defended my husband with teary eyes. Why am I being made out to be the bad one?
Ava, it's late. I'll take you home.
No, you stay here. I'll take her home. I forcefully pushed my husband aside and decided to drop her off at her home. I didn't want to leave my husband and her alone anymore. It takes about 30 minutes to drive from our house to my son and his wife's house. I had to spend an awkward time with her until we reached her house, but it couldn't be helped. As we drove through the silent night, Ava suddenly opened her mouth.
Angela, are you jealous because Nathan and I are close?
The anger welled up again at her mocking tone, but if we fought here, I would only be made the villain again. I took a deep breath and tried to answer calmly. If you think that, why do you go out alone with my husband?
Well, because Nathan is so cool. I want to be with him more.
You don't understand how lonely Smith is. If you have time to hang out with your father-in-law, you should take care of your own husband. I had also received counsel from my son. He told me that he hasn't been going out with his wife lately, and they aren't doing newlywed things either. I couldn't mention that his wife has been frequently meeting my husband. I wanted to avoid a rift in our family because of my son's wife.
But Smith is not enough for me. He's too nice and lacks excitement. I get along with Nathan because your husband pays attention to me, you know?
Has she forgotten that she's talking to her mother-in-law right now? Her words were incredibly impertinent and rude. After dropping off my son's wife, I returned home without seeing my son. I didn't know how to face him. And then a big incident happened. One day I was invited to Ava's parents' house. I have a lunch with my son's wife's parents about once a month under the pretext of a dining party. Since exchanging contact information, our closeness has quickly increased, so I happily accepted the invitation. My son and his wife were also expected to join. Of course, I invited my husband as well, but he did not give a favorable response. The party was scheduled for a day off during the day, but he said he had an important work at the company that day. Since he wasn't going out with my son's wife, I felt relieved. After my husband left the house, I checked the lock and also left. It's not too far to Ava's parents' house, and it's easy to get there by one train. But when I arrived at the station, I realized I had forgotten the gift I was supposed to bring to them. There was still plenty of time, so I decided to rush back and get it. When I opened the door and entered the house, I heard voices from the house where there should have been no one. I clearly felt a human presence, and there was a creepy sound as if the floor was creaking. It seemed that someone was on the second floor. Filled with anxiety that there might be an intruder, I slowly and silently climbed up to the second floor. Somehow, there were clothes scattered in the hallway, like breadcrumbs, leading to the bedroom I shared with my husband.
Nathan.
Ava.
Then I heard a familiar voice coming from the room. It was a whisper, as if sharing a secret, filled with enjoyment.
Is this okay? Rejecting mother-in-law's invitation and doing this?
I'd rather be with you, Ava, than keep company with an old woman like that.
Oh, stop it.
I, who peeked into the room through the slightly open door, was lost for words. My undressed husband and daughter-in-law were lying on the bed, embracing each other. The sweet atmosphere that filled the room was like that of a pair of lovers.
I'm happy that a wife like Ava has come to me.
We should also pay attention to mother-in-law, right? Poor thing.
Just treat her like a housekeeper. She's good for nothing after all.
The two of them, laughing while speaking ill of me, probably had no idea they were being watched. I couldn't contain the anger that welled up from the bottom of my heart. I would make them regret doing such filthy things in the couple's bedroom in broad daylight. Before entering the room, I made a call to my daughter-in-law's mother's smartphone. Once the call connected, I switched it to video call, and with determination, I barged into the bedroom. You two, you're doing something incredible, aren't you? My husband and daughter-in-law, still embracing each other, looked at me with wide eyes in surprise. Without caring, I made sure to broadcast what was happening to Ava's parents, who were probably preparing for a dinner party. The reason you two get along so strangely well is because of this relationship, isn't it? Of course, you couldn't tell the truth. Everyone, what should we do about these two? Upon realizing that they were being filmed, my daughter-in-law suddenly let out a shriek.
Stop filming, pervert!
Oh, are you introducing yourself? You're the one who's dirty and a pervert for doing this with your mother-in-law's husband. Being retorted at, my daughter-in-law made a face as if she had bitten on a sour bug and ran towards the clothes I had gathered. She was planning to snatch the clothes and run away. But I, while still showing the two of them to Ava's parents, threw the clothes out of the bedroom window. The wind was strong today, and the clothes flew far away, but I didn't care. From the other side of the phone, I could hear angry voices exclaiming, "What are you doing?" and, "Ava, what is the meaning of this?" to the parents of my son's wife. And then,
Ava, Dad, what are you doing?
my son, who had already arrived, had also seen their disgrace. In a cold voice, my son murmured to his dumbfounded father and wife,
I'm coming over now. Stay there. If you run away, I'm not going to forgive you.
His voice was filled with anger and harshness that I couldn't imagine coming from him normally. My husband and daughter-in-law seemed too drained even to run away. and they hung their heads, still naked. Soon after, my son and the parents of my daughter-in-law arrived at our house. As I guided them to the bedroom, my husband and daughter-in-law were still sitting dumbfounded.
When did the two of you start this relationship? Have you been deceiving me and our parents all along?
When my son asked them accusingly, my husband and daughter-in-law began to talk almost simultaneously. They started this relationship not long after my son got married. My husband seemed to enjoy being liked by his young and cute daughter-in-law more than his aging wife, and he apparently got carried away. My daughter-in-law said that she was attracted to my experienced and dependable husband more than my kind but somehow unsatisfying son. However, we could not understand their reasoning at all. They made us feel sick to think that they had given in to their desires and started a relationship, despite the fact that there was a 30-year age gap and that the other party was a married relative. After discussing it, my son, I, and the parents of my daughter-in-law came to a conclusion.
I'm going to divorce Ava, and I'm going to cut ties with you, Dad.
I'm also going to leave you. My son and I decided to divorce our respective spouses and also to claim compensation for the affair. The parents of my daughter-in-law said that they would let their daughter take responsibility for her actions, and they agreed to the divorce and compensation claims. It was probably an incident too enormous to cover up. Even I feel pathetic and embarrassed by what my husband has done. However, the moment they heard the words divorce and claim for damages, my husband and my son's wife, who had been all lovey-dovey until then, began to act in a way that was unimaginable. Surprisingly, they began to blame each other.
It's Ava's fault. She seduced me, and that's why this happened.
No, it's Nathan's fault. He thought he could get away with it because I am his son's wife.
Surprisingly, the reason they ended up having an affair was due to both of them. It was an ugly dispute, unimaginable from the sweet words they had been whispering to each other until a while ago. Apparently, they thought if they could clarify who was at fault, they could reduce or cancel the claim for damages. Unfortunately, neither I nor my son would be fooled by such a farce, especially my son, who was furious at being betrayed by his own father and wife.
There's no way one of you is to blame. If you thought having an affair was wrong, you should have stopped it by your own will, right? Blaming someone else and overlooking your own lack of discipline. It's disgraceful.
My son calmly criticized the two. Both my husband and my eldest son's wife just hung their heads, unable to say anything. Afterward, my son and I both filed for divorce and claimed damages from our respective partners. Fortunately, my son's ex-mother-in-law had recorded that video call, which became a strong piece of evidence. My husband wanted to reconcile, but I had no intention of doing so. Now you're asking for reconciliation after saying all those nasty things about me so happily? You just don't want to pay the compensation.
That was just a slip of the tongue. I truly love only you.
A truly sincere person wouldn't cheat in the first place. I'm disappointed with you, and it's a joke to think of spending my old age with someone like you. After firmly rejecting him, my husband gradually gave up. It seems that my son is also being persistently asked by his wife to reconcile, but he has no intention of forgiving her. When normally gentle people get angry, no amount of apology will earn their forgiveness. Perhaps my son's wife learned this the hard way. Although we apologized sincerely to the parents of my son's wife, they comforted us, saying it wasn't our responsibility, but that of the parties involved. Regardless of my husband and my son's wife, I think I was lucky to meet such good people. After divorcing my husband, I moved out of the house and started living in an apartment. I thought I would feel lonely after parting with my husband, whom I had been with for many years, but I actually felt relieved. My son seemed the same. His face lit up after he parted ways with his wife. After I divorced my ex-husband, a rumor spread at his workplace that he had an affair with his son's wife, and he was reportedly looked at with disdain by his colleagues. Moreover, he was transferred to a less important position due to his misconduct, even though he only had a few years left until retirement. Not only did he lose his wife and son, but his job was also taken away. He seems to be typing on his keyboard with empty eyes every day as if he had lost the will to live. The ex-wife of my son also had to pay a big price. She was disowned by her parents and distanced by relatives who knew about the circumstances of her divorce. She, in her 30s, who has never worked properly, seems to be struggling with unfamiliar tasks at the only part-time job she managed to get. With no savings or income, she is now living in poverty. And rumors say she has become so destitute that there's hardly any trace of her old self. After cutting ties with the two, my son has been concentrating on his work, improving his performance even further, and it has been decided that he will go to an overseas branch. I was very happy about my son's great success. It's sad to be separated from him, but I want to fully support his life. I am still working as a nursing assistant. My colleagues who knew about my late life divorce spoke to me kindly and took me out to dinner, saying it was a celebration. There were surprisingly many divorcees around me, and everyone encouraged me, saying, "You'll get through it." Surrounded by kind people, I feel truly blessed. Starting to live alone, I learned the pleasure of having a slightly better meal for myself and spending my holidays elegantly. Since I got married, I've spent more time on my husband than on myself, so it was actually a little delightful to be able to pamper myself like this. Sure, having a partner would probably be more fun, but right now I'm thoroughly satisfied because I'm having fun with my friends and my son. I can't help but enjoy just thinking about how to live